Welcome to another episode of On the Issues with Alon Ben-Meir. Today's guest is Yossef Ben-Meir, co-founder and president of the High Atlas Foundation, a Moroccan-U.S. non-governmental organization dedicated to sustainable development. In this episode, Alon and Yossef discuss sustainable development in Morocco and the role the High Atlas Foundation has played in development. Particularly, they discuss the importance of water infrastructure in uplifting everyday Moroccans, the environmental and societal implications of planting millions of trees across Morocco, and the critical importance of community participation in establishing development projects which will benefit local communities.
Hello, Yossef. Hello, Yossef. I have to say, sweetheart.
Thank you.
You know, you're in Morocco now, must be about 4 o'clock
3 o'clock. Yeah.
3 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want our audience to know that I have conducted over the years, last few years, 142 podcasts, and I've had so many incredible guests, generals, top officials, professors, all kind, and I enjoy just about every single one of them. But today is really very special for me. It's special because I'm having a podcast with my very, very dear, loving son, and it is not because he's my son, and I want him to be on the air, but because he has something very unique and very special to offer. Very briefly, Yosef volunteer as a Peace Corps volunteer, went to Morocco more than 30 years ago. 30 years, imagine this. And fell in love with the country. And he decided to stay. In the interim, after his BA, he did his master's as well as Ph.D. And now, 30 years later, I visited him only a few months ago. And what he's done is absolutely incredible. He has developed a center called the High Atlas Foundation with over 120 people working there, making major, significant project that benefited tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Moroccan, uh, largely poor Moroccan, have been able to lift their fate a bit and become more productive and happy, and certainly feeling that they have been lifted out of poverty and now be able to become very constructive contributor to their society. So what Joseph has done, like a miracle, and his expertise been recognized by many countries. He traveled extensively in the Middle East, giving lectures and directing many institutions, advising them as to how to develop participatory sustainable development project. I've said I could say so much more because I'm so proud of my son. So Yosef, thank you for taking the time. I'm so delighted to have you with us this morning. I want our audience first to hear from you what it is that you're doing now, and what are the implications to the communities with which you are working.
Well, thank you, Dad, for everything you just said. And I guess I have my own just quick disclaimers that I love my dad with all my heart and soul forever and always.
Thank you.
And it's not, I can't separate my journey from his inspiration and journey in his own right. And I'm sure in our conversations, you'll see how his life is embodied in essential ways in my own. What am I doing now is we are in a special moment. We founded the High Atlas Foundation 26 years ago. And there's been, of course, in recent months and recent years, transitions in the financing of development. And so we are very much focused as an organization on creating our own revenue streams, self-reliant sources of income to fund our human service mission, which is assisting Moroccan communities in their determination of the projects they want most of all in their lives. So how do we catalyze that kind of community analysis of the change they seek, of the projects they want most of all, and how can we attach those dreams, those initiatives, with finance and their implementation of their goals. So that's what we do every day, but we're in a period of scaling the catalyzing of community planning and scaling the potential revenue generation to achieve those projects.
So can you give me some, our audience would like to know some of these efforts, some of these projects that you are in the midst of undertaking at the present time?
Well, I'll say just a word of how we get to learn what communities want most of all, and then I'll describe what those specific project designs are. So many times in our lives, for many of us, not enough, but we think about what is in our heart of hearts. What will fulfill me? If I could achieve any one thing in my future, it is this. And it's hard to know what that is oftentimes. We may ask ourselves, but to discover what that is we have to be so fortunate in important ways. But there are methods that help us explore those kinds of most sincere wishes that we have. So sustainability requires projects that are built on those kinds of self-described critical goals that we carry in our hearts. Now, if we've never been asked that, or if that we've internalized doubt and fear, all of these things inhibit us from discovering our dream of dreams. And so a critical part of the work of the High Atlas Foundation is applying a methodology that we call Imagine, which is 4 days of that kind of introspective, personal, collective experience that enables ultimately projects that are prioritized. And so we can't separate those project types from that kind of community decision-making process that's highly personal and emotional. People look at their outlooks of each other, of social relationships, of work, of money, of our own sense of self. All of these things bear on our ability to have confidence and self-belief. It took us most of 3 years to test and develop this methodology. Now, what comes out of that? We've applied that 4-day experience over 250 plus times, involving 7,000 people, primarily women. More than 6,000 of the participants of the 7,000 are women. And we can talk about why we emphasize that. But across really rural Morocco, what emerges at the top is water infrastructure, water for drinking, water for irrigation. Now, we have primary schools in mountain areas, in rural places, without bathrooms. That suppresses girls' participation by 16%. If we're able to have water in those locations, not only can we have infant mortality, there's 4 times the rate of infant mortality in rural places than in urban. But we can also increase girls' participation in education because they no longer have to fetch water. All kinds of essential benefits come from clean drinking water. A recent evaluation showed that actually couples, married families, have less stress and get along better. Marriages improve by having clean drinking water regularly available. So in our case in rural Morocco, of course, this stretches into the matter of agriculture. 80% of rural incomes come from agriculture. And it's important to understand this condition we're in, which is that 70% of agricultural land generates just 10 to 15% of agricultural revenue. So we have family farmers on 2 hectares or less in most parts of the country growing barley and corn. And in order to make those staples meet, we need more than 2 hectares. So most of the people who experience poverty in Morocco are farming families. And when they search their dreams of what they want most of all, included alongside water infrastructure is transitioning to fruit tree agriculture, which is far more lucrative, resilient. We've had a terrible, awful drought. It's hard to find the words to describe what it is to live year after year in this. I call it sometimes it feels like the shadow, because it never leaves you. You wake up with the feeling of drought. You go to sleep with the feeling of drought. Talking about it, you feel the emotion, which is key for water infrastructure, but also relying on fruit trees that are resilient against drought. And that includes olive, carob. Thank goodness, almond does very well. Not many countries in the world grow almond. We have a forestry tree variety of olive in Morocco to show its bounty. Argan, of course, endemic to Morocco. One other country in the world, Costa Rica, has argan, and that has, like carob, has forestry tree properties, meaning that it needs water irrigation in its initial years, but then it's often running like a forestry tree to show its great resiliency. And they can live, carob can live 200 years. So family farmers, when given the chance, they are prioritizing water infrastructure and fruit tree agriculture, which not only increases girls' participation in education, but also it increases women's literacy when we launch the project, as I said, with women's groups. So that's where most of our funding goes toward. These initiatives, these dreams that are so widespread in the country.
All right, that's a great. Tell me, I know when I was there, you also showed me the number of trees that are being planted is just astronomical. Can you give our listeners a sense of the scope of the work in this regard? What is the scope?
Well, it never feels like enough, or not even close, or sometimes it doesn't feel relevant.
Nevertheless, it's
But it
massive.
also, an adult life. I started when I was 24 to tell you the scope that we're able to achieve. I mean, it took us 11 years, Dad, to plant our first 1,000,000 trees, and now we manage support communities in their management and distribution of trees. 9 nurseries in Morocco, and they generate around 4 million trees a year. And so since the start of 2024, it's around there are 1,280 rural municipalities in Morocco, and we planted in around 470 rural municipalities. It's a bit more than a third of the rural municipalities in the country in the past couple of years. And we monitor that. And that's also having a system of monitoring that, which is, of course, you have to go to those trees. And we're not planting thousands in each place. We're family. Our reason for being is to be helpful to the farming families of the country who have small plots. And so we're talking about 50 trees here, 100 trees there, maybe 200 trees. It's rare that we do many hundreds or thousands in one location. That means monitoring is costly. It requires a team from the areas where we plant. And that's a critical part. It took us 7 years to really get to this point of being able to monitor at the international standard that we've been able to achieve. But I say it's little. because when you look at the demand for trees, as the nation is transitioning from barley and corn, or so many farming families are, it's just we never ended a season feeling like, bravo. The demand just always so far outweighs our ability to meet it.
I see. Tell me, we also at one point we discussed, the environmental implications of planting these many trees. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, so Morocco is fortunate, and of course everything fortunate is also complicated, or there's always other sides to the goodness in life. But Morocco has four mountain ranges of the tallest peaks in North Africa are in Morocco. We have the High Atlas, Western High Atlas, Eastern High Atlas, Middle Atlas, the Reef. And so part of planting needs to include terracing. And when you terrace, you stabilize mountainsides. In the devastating 2023 earthquake of September, the killer was the falling mountains. And if they were terraced, lives would have been saved. Not only so, it contains water higher elevation. We're able to replenish the watershed by keeping water and making more gradual the downflow. And so terrace enables that containment of water, and also prevents the devastating erosion, the slides that come with when there is rain. And so there's that. And then, of course, there are nitrogen fixing trees. Carob is one, of course, and that's essential for the soil. We're able to develop designs, ecological designs, where you have, say, argon and carob, and they're at different root depths, so they don't compete for water. And then if you can combine Atriplex, which is nitrogen inducing, then you really get a synergistic combination of trees and plants that can just be incredible for the soil. If we were to apply everything I'm saying, including adaptive management, meaning you have sensory data of when to irrigate, when to harvest, you get contextual information to help us optimize decisions of related to soil, precipitation, and so forth. And then with the water infrastructure I described, with endemic varieties of trees that we're talking about, if you put all of these elements in place, terracing, you can actually have a net gain of water. And so that is really the goal and the dream. And that, of course, inseparable to all of this is capacity building of the farming family members in their management of this kind of integrated approach.
I see. You mentioned the earthquake, and I really would like you to talk about it, because I know that the High Atlas Foundation was very instrumental in helping the many, many hundreds of families that have suffered, really suffered greatly because of this, of the earthquake, and how these terraces and what you have done, what the foundation have done in order to alleviate the suffering and the destruction that has taken place as a result of this earthquake. Can you tell our listeners, what actually happened, and the extent to which the High Atlas Foundation was very, very helpful in alleviating the pain and the suffering and the destruction that these villages have sustained as a result of this earthquake?
Dad, my brother, my father's oldest son, had lived through the Northridge earthquake in California. I've never experienced a natural disaster before in my life. September 9th, 2023. It was one, and of course, we are 2+ years later, and I can't say that we're recovered. Let me sort of reflect a little bit on the. For one thing, we learned is that who we are as an organization in that moment of crisis really decides our ability to be of help, or to the extent we can be. So, do we have a procurement system where we can purchase responsibly, quickly? Do we have a network of members of communities in the struck areas where we can understand what they need immediately now? Do we have a network of vehicles, of trucks, to deploy with tons of food and essential items that the people need? Who are we on September 9th, 2023, as a person, as a head of an organization, as a team, as people who work together, or whatever our relation? All of this matters in that moment of terrible difficulty. And one of the things that we had in place, that 4-day methodology that I described as an empowerment approach towards sustainable development, one of the things we learned as humanitarian organizations came to us immediately in the earthquake's aftermath was that its activities strongly resemble trauma healing procedures, that psychosocial, emotional healing experiences have significant overlap with the activities that we've been deploying, facilitating 10 years prior to achieve sustainable development. We always knew in those 4 days experiences, it helped people address trauma issues that they may have at home, with families, in their own work lives. But it was after the earthquake where we understood that it's actually also a psychosocial healing experience by design. And so that, having that ready to go, we implemented it 101 times following the earthquake. It was the first time we were directly funded just to do that.
I see.
By Project Hope and others. And so that gave us, so here we are, September 9th, September 10th, it happened at 11 o'clock at night. 3,000 people lost their lives, more than 5,000 injured, 50,000 families without homes, just, honest terror, Dad. And so here we are, first of all, in all totaled, we moved around 700 tons of food materials, but we immediately was able to first hear from the people because of the agriculture. This is what I want to get to. The agricultural activities we were doing for years and years gave us the network to know how the people were doing and what they needed. Right. Moving hundreds of tons of agricultural materials every year gave us the trucks. Right. Having colleagues at the High Atlas Foundation live from the communities that were devastated gave us also the immediate information that we needed. And then, so we were able to move relatively quickly. And then we had this 15 facilitators of empowerment trained in the very methodology that we needed to support the psychosocial healing and planning for the future process. Mm-hmm. So it's just, now I can go on too about our shortcomings as an organization. I mean, you see yourself incredibly starkly as a team, as an organization in the mirror. And so, we, in areas we needed to do, better. I remember the first 4 days, just so disgruntled as to who we were. It took about, but then again, I never lived through a disaster before, and you just don't know how we'll react, and so on the one hand, we're being so hard on ourselves, or I am hard on myself and ourselves, but you have to understand that everyone is hurting, everyone is in pain, everyone is in a profound struggle, and so that's a very key thing. But I remember by the end of the first week, we had come around and gotten to be more fluid, moving more materials out. The drought had hurt. When I was a Peace Corps volunteer, every family had a cow or two for milk, for
Right.
butter. Because of the drought, families didn't. And then combined with the earthquake, with a fall in incomes, they didn't have milk. And so when we're talking about children, one of the things that we're getting, it's not just all kinds of supplies, but, just all the essential items you can imagine moving out. And then I know I'm going on with my answer, Dad,
No,
but
but this is very important because this is really, you are being involved in saving lives of so many, and especially including children. I don't know. I think it's very important. I would like you to further elaborate, please, on
yeah,
this very important point.
it ends up around um, most of what we spent, around $5 million, went toward water infrastructure. So you can imagine the rock slides taking out canals, taking out basins, the piping dislocated. And then when you restore, you want to restore with solar water pump systems. And so you do the immediate relief, the psychosocial healing, and then the water infrastructure. I don't want to give the impression that these are three phases. You move to each one after completing the other, because they really end up to be all simultaneous.
That's right. Yeah.
And also, so what ended up to be water infrastructure, we laid around 60 or so kilometers of pipe, more than 20 kilometers of canal. We built around 20 irrigation basins, terracing, hundreds of terraces, around 15,000 families we've been able to benefit following the earthquake, through all of the situations I described. And it's not over. You apply the 4-day psychosocial healing experience with 101 villages. That's a lot of dreams. It's a lot of recovery.
Right.
There are situations that are just so horrifying to talk about. But we're still following up on, you don't want to implement the 4-day psychosocial experience and not support the follow-up, the follow-through, the implementation. And so, we remain committed to that.
Right. Now, after basically 2.5 years after the earthquake, I'm sure you visited some of these villages, since like a couple of months ago. Can you just briefly describe what's the difference now, 2.5 years later, the net benefit that these villages now have been able to reap from the help of the High Atlas Foundation?
When we're with partners and community members right after the earthquake, and how far they've built for the years prior, and then we're standing, on what felt like ruin. It's just, there are a lot of people in the world who know, and maybe everyone in their own way, feel this kind of loss, a setback. you've built so far and it feels like, you have to start over. One of the things that to reflect upon on your question, Dad, is first, the benefits are uneven. So in some part,
Uneven?
uneven in that
Uneven. Okay.
you
Yeah.
can see relationships of cooperatives work from a tent, and you have families in tents for a year, for 2 years. Work from a tent. Well, that was another huge part of our effort. We've been working in the Sahara for years with women's groups who make tents traditionally in the Sahara. We were able to immediately source Saharan tents, which are 3-ply. I mean, these are tents that are passed down generations.
Right.
And we were able to distribute more than 500 of them of different sizes, including the sizes where many people can work. And so we've seen women's cooperatives come together in social relationships. What are their relationships in that moment of disaster? And they just the groups that are coming to mind it's just about unifying and working so hard and saving every little thing that they gain, and then rebuilding and rebuilding in cases far better than what happened prior to the earthquake, what they had.
Right.
The rebound is I want to say breathtaking, but it's so. If you were to say to me that 2 years later these cooperatives will have this and this and this and this and this after 2 years, it'd be so hard to believe. But maybe that's just because of lack of faith. But they did it, and it's okay. Does the Highest Foundation assist where we can? We assist in helping them acquire land. We assist in building infrastructure. We assist in capacity building. We assist in materials to whether not it could be machinery, but also to fabric or what they need to create items. Carpets or whatever it may be, food, dry foods. Do we assist in this way? Yes. But it's, that's, if that were the long haul, that would be easy. But it's really the incredible amount of work that people did as families, day in and day out, as communities, and saving, and then as a unit, putting their shared resources into building together. And so it's incredibly remarkable. And the reward just keeps coming and coming when you do that. The visitors who come, the buyers, the purchasers, the university groups, all the people interested who are interested in the questions that you're asking, Dad, want to see these places. And so it's just and then the more you do, the more you can do, and it just continues to grow. In other cases, relationships weren't as the same, or their product didn't allow for resiliency, or location, or division, or conflict, or loss, or all kinds of factors come in. The pain of this indescribable emotional, the loss of family, all of these things come to bear. And does that mean that we're able to rebuild in the way I just described? We've offered communities rebuilding, and they were too devastated to take up the offer.
I see.
When you lose so much, Dad, you can't work. You can't. You need more time to heal before you can embark on your next initiative or journey. And so, that's why I say it's uneven. It's the glorious stories of the best beauty of humanity, and the ache, that just takes us more time to resolve or just live with.
Yeah, you mentioned growing the social cohesion. So as a result of this disaster, and you mentioned it. Just I want you to dwell on it for just a minute or two. The extent to which the social cohesion has been enhanced as a result. I mean, here as a disaster on the one hand, on the other hand, produced one thing that was not as powerful, as important as was before. That is growing the social cohesion between within the village itself, the villages themselves, and between the villages, between all the villages. Can you enlighten our audience how this came about?
We always learn when we talk about sustainable development that essentially it rests upon relationships because markets rise and fall. Uh, Disasters come upon us. There's always fluctuation and change. And so if sustainable development were to rely on those kinds of factors or conditions, then how could we really achieve long-term resiliency in this state of ever
Influence
ebbs?
change.
And so we've come to see now when the idea of sustainable development was first born in 87 out of a UN report focusing on not exhausting natural resources today to the extent it compromises tomorrow, it had an important element. But we understand sustainability to require so much more, that it's economic, it's social, it's cultural, it's technical, it's financial, it's political, it's historic. It's all of these dimensions um, playing a factor in geographic, playing a factor on the design of initiative. That development needs to consider all of these elements that I just listed in order for it to have a chance to endure across time. And what allows it to have all of these points of view interjected in the design experience, the cultural, the social, all these ways of perceiving and thinking and analyzing? Participation. If the broader, the more inclusive, when it's genuinely community members of different ages of all backgrounds that are involved in that discussion, then you're going to include the cultural point of view, and you're going to include the historic point of view and the local environmental point of view, and all of these aspects that need to be considered as we decide on a project course.
Right.
So sustainability is equated with community participation.
And community participation translate to cohesiveness within the community itself.
That's right. And so when I talk to you about that 4 days, Dad, or participatory planning, or all of these activities that lend toward a project defined, they really are about relationship building.
Right.
It's about communication. It's about interaction. It's about making sure all voices are being conveyed and that we're acknowledging each other, that it's gender dynamic, that it's elder and it's young, and that we managed a project for USAID called Akira, which had focused on cultural preservation, and it ended at the end of 2024, a natural ending. And our gateway to ultimately projects of the people was through cultural dialogue and sharing of our common past and storytelling.
Right.
And in that process of relationship building and trust and goodwill, we can segue that community conversation toward planning the future.
I see. Yeah.
So and that's where you get the empowerment. We can't have empowerment. We need information to feel empowerment, but we need our network. We need our self-belief. We need our affirmations of ourselves and each other.
Right.
So, we can't separate the planning experience that communities go through with their relationship and trust building.
It's amazing. Yeah. Also you mentioned visitors, you mentioned students actually coming whole semesters, spending time. And I know that's specifically from University of Virginia, is it? And some other universities. Can you talk about this particular program? Because here we are, you have this foundation. Obviously, it's been recognized for its achievement, for its importance, and so universities like the University of Virginia have been sending on a regular basis a student to spend a semester learning from what has been happening, what the kind of work that Atlas Foundation is doing. I'd like you to tell our audience how this program works and the benefits that as a result from this kind of programs. Yeah.
It's Dad, of course, that the academic dimension has always been part of the High Atlas Foundation experience. And there's a very practical reason for that. And then if I'll say how these universities play such a key part of our mission. We need to be writers and analysts and data gatherers and researchers in order to first to understand the conditions and be supportive of communities' own decision making. That's the people's data. That's the information upon which they make decisions. So this is qualitative, community-driven information along all the dimensions that I described. That is, in a sense, culturally relative because it's community perceived. But that's upon which they decide their project course. And that's how our pathway to projects that have long life. So that data gathering element is absolutely key. We also need to dedicate ourselves to creating a society that wants this kind of community movement and participation and control and management and evaluation and benefit, that there are policies that we need to encourage and inform to help us go to scale. Now, and so this naturally fits into a university or academic discipline. So graduate students, undergraduate students of all levels, high school students, they need to be data gatherers and researchers and writers. They need to help us explain all kinds of situations, including, for example, communities interested in almond and processing almond into oil. Well, how's almond oil doing in the global markets? Is there a domestic market? Of all the agricultural product I'm describing, all different kinds of processing, and that means all different kinds of research and business planning that we need. And that's just one dimension. So the data, the information, the writing, the research, the publishing, we've been visited by around 50 or so universities the past 2 years. We've done no advertising for it. And that's all amazing. Of it is because of the publishing that students and staff do. As people research Morocco and want to come to Morocco, we come up because we are advocates of community needs in writing and also in video. And I should say too, Morocco is the story. Morocco wants everything I'm describing. Morocco wants women's liberation. It wants community control of development processes. Morocco is committed to decentralization, to South-South unity, to renewable energy, to multiculturalism, interfaith, interreligious collaboration for human development. So we're in a policy environment that allows for scale, but we need to always, participate in that.
Right.
So that's a key. The proposal development students help with. Photo documentation, reporting for our partners. 1 year I did an analysis of the amount of revenue that student volunteers have generated for us in that 1 year. It was approaching $300,000.
That's amazing.
The partnership with the University of Virginia, we mitigate carbon. They have 2,000 interns coming and going for a relatively small university. They have a large number of global internships. And we mitigate carbon for that travel through planting trees in Morocco. We do it for Robert Bosch College. University College London is coming to us at the end of this month for 2 weeks for their own urban health study. And we need that study because that helps us know what people are feeling and thinking and wanting and needing. And then we're here to follow up on that. University of Virginia, we've had the summer course. This is now the 10th year.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's 8 weeks. It's 14 students. And it's all about, it's called participatory development in application. And they learn by doing. And that's really the key part of why universities, we have 5 formal partnerships with public universities here in Morocco, which is key for our ability to scale. They are the future trainers of empowerment and participatory planning. I just came yesterday from Ibn Zor University in Agadir, and they were learning a participatory technique called community mapping. And this is our 2nd year with them. Ibn Zor University in Fez has been a huge part of us for years. The National Endowment for Democracy has been incredible supporters of youth training, skills building, applied learning which is really democratic planning.
Right.
They are the agents of democratic procedures. And so, Middle East Partnership Initiative, they were the first, which is out of the Department of State of the United States. They were the first in 2008 to fund us at a university at Hassan II University. It was then the United States ambassador, Thomas Riley, where we signed that agreement in his home with Her Royal Highness Princess Lana Miriam present, among other agreements that we signed that almost, 18 years ago. With Ambassador Dwight Bush, we signed the agreement with Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah in his home. And so these are very, very important aspects of not just employability of young people, but to be able to affect and benefit more and more communities.
Amazing. Yeah. And I know that you've been invited to go to several Arab states to speak about the programs you're doing, the work that you're doing. Can you just tell our listeners briefly, some of these visits and their importance and implications, both in the countries themselves and to the foundation?
These are very important experiences. And I think for us, the amount that we learned, the situation of water in Egypt is illuminating for us. I would say we'd had, the 7-year drought taught us a lot, but we're able to share important technical information and management approaches, potential partnerships that can come about through these visits. Last year, we visited the Emirates, and that was key for us with the Zaid Prize. We were a finalist for that and when visiting, but they coincided with Sustainability Week there. And so those relationships were hugely important for us in being able to launch an important program with young people here in Morocco dedicated to all aspects of agroforestry, water management. It's really about relationship building that that these experiences enable. I want to say, because I know, Dad, you've dedicated your best energy to Turkey, and there was an important visit that we've had with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation that regarding water management that was at that time very formative for us. And so Jordan was really important. The Bureau of Oceans Environmental and Scientific Research out of the Department of State. Of course, in prior years, we were able to subgrant with Jordanian partners in their water management situation and learn so much from them. And they also became partners in Youth Conservation Corps, which was funded with the U.S. Department of Forest Department, which then, evolved into another iteration, but it was at a critical stage for us. And so I just want to say that these relationships are ongoing. Dr. Matuk, who you introduced me 2 years ago at Al-Baqa Applied University in Amman, remains someone very, very close to us. And in that project I referred to was incredibly instrumental. So, I just, you can't say enough about partners because they make you. They make the organization. They make us better. Middle East Partnership Initiative in 2008, when they took us on, which was at that time the largest grant we ever had, they looked at all of our financial procedures. They looked at all of our human resource manual. They gave us information, a point of view, capacity building that allowed us to mature as an organization that we would never have otherwise. USAID has done that for us in multiple ways. So these partnerships, when it's a corporate partner, a government one, Moroccan government partnerships, EU partnerships, all of these things, these elements sort of make you better programmatically, financial management, evaluation, how to, our human resource system. All of these things have to mature as an organization. How do you do it unless you open up to audits and people's analysis? Right. And again, all of these relationships have played a vital role into us becoming who we are.
Well, transparency obviously lends you a tremendous amount of credibility to the foundation itself, and that is critical especially in terms of fundraising. You mentioned the carbon, and I know that much of the I don't know the percentage, but considerable amount of money is raised because of the carbon exchange. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for a couple of minutes?
Well, maybe I'll first mention that it relates to an important broader point that we made as an organization, which is that we need to generate reoccurring revenue for the organization to fund the human service mission, irrespective of government priorities or whether this proposal gets funded or not. We need to have a reoccurring source of income for financial sustainability. And in our earlier years, we had committed to value-added processing of agricultural product, almond and walnuts, certified organic. We had built a facility to process what ended up to be 10 tons of shelled nuts, vacuum sealed, successful export to the U.S. consumed with people, customer satisfaction. But what we learned was that it didn't play to our strength. We're better tree planters and monitors than we are at managing factories and machinery. Right. In that whole experience. And plus, rightfully, our board, you assume a lot of risk as well when you do that. So the carbon offsetting represents that overall purpose of reoccurring revenue for the organization, for the communities, and going with partners who believe in the ultimate sequesters of carbon, being the caretakers of the trees, the farming families, significantly benefiting from the overall program. And so really what it comes down to is being able to not just plant, important numbers of trees, which takes years and years and years for us to get to that capacity. Right. 1 million, where now 26 years later, we're able to do, 4 million a year. I mean, that's, I'm 56. That's what, that's where I've been. I don't know. and I wondered, I mean, not to get, but have I done enough? I don't know.
As far as I'm concerned, plenty. Plenty.
Well,
I
Dad,
just, toward this conclusion of this, I think incredible information you have imparted. You mentioned women empowerment. I would very, very love to discuss this with you in another podcast, but only a couple of words about the what you're doing and how they empower women. And we were going to leave a whole session, I hope, soon about women empowerment. But just give us an introduction to the women empowerment.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that we planted trees in 470 or so municipalities, more than a third of the rural municipalities in the country. Did we do the 4-day empowerment experience in all of those places? No. In fact, the vast majority, we get requests from all around the country for trees. We send the varieties and the quantities that are requested of us. But we don't have the resources, the team, to walk the talk, to launch in all places the 4-day empowerment with women. And then we did a study, Dad, of what happens which is most of the time, when we simply meet the requests for trees, and when we plant trees following women's empowerment and their determination to be part of the agricultural domain. And what we found, both have similar survival rates of trees, both have similar levels of household incomes, but there were not increases. When we launched with women's empowerment, there are increases in women's literacy and increases in girls' participation in education. We did not find increases in those areas when we simply meet the request for trees. And so we have evidence to show that by simply advancing agricultural development, we are making more stark gender-based inequality. Women own, according to the World Bank, according to the United Nations, women own 1% of property on Earth. It's a few percent higher in Morocco. So when we're saying agricultural development, it's primarily enhancing the landowner, and we know that to be men. And so we have to, in terms of, when we talk now about carbon and investment, we have to integrate empowerment experiences in order to ensure that women gain and are drivers of the agricultural development experience. And if not, we're going to exaggerate more and more, make more and more extreme the inequality that we see locally and globally.
Right. Well, I mean, this is honestly fascinating. I do absolutely would love to have definitely another podcast or even more. I want to next one. Hopefully, we want to focus on this particular subject, as you well know. Human rights issues, women's right empowerment is extremely important to me. This is something I also devote a considerable amount of time for. Again, Yossef, I cannot thank you enough
It's
for
over?
the time. It's over, believe it or not.
But I get to call you tonight.
You can. It's incredible what you have imparted with the information. It's extremely important. Whoever's listened to this, and I think a great deal have been learned from this. Again, thank you so much. And
Dad, I love you, Dad. Thank you for inviting me. I'm just so happy. It means the world to to be invited to have this conversation with you. I know you've heard it and you've seen it, but thank you for sharing it with your audience.
thank you so much, Yosef.
Okay, I love you, Dad. Bye 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 bye
Bye bye. Bye bye.
bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode on the issues. You can find this podcast on my SoundCloud page, and stay tuned to my social media accounts for the latest analysis and announcements.